Technology of Life, a book for heroes. Annotation. This book is about life and the gift we have, which each of us uses differently. It is addressed to everyone living in this world now, and to those who will live in 1,000 years. But there is a special category of people for whom it is primarily intended. It is a book for heroes. Those who want to remake their country or even the entire world, believing they do it selflessly. Vladimir Tarasov, Technology of Life, a book for heroes. Dedicated to my students, both good and not so good. Author's preface. You are holding a book that might change your life, much as it once changed mine. Most of the thoughts you will find here are my own. They are new only in the sense that they represent something long forgotten by humankind. They form part of the foundation of human civilization. As far as I see it, humans have barely changed in the past 2,000 or 3,000 years. This book is not about science. It is purely about life, about the life that was once given to each of us. That is why there are no references here to any authors whose ideas I may quote literally or adapt to my own perspective. In essence, I sift these ideas through my own filter, and what passes through remains. I also hope that no ancient Chinese or other authors will file any legal claims about their intellectual property. Lastly, I want to say that this book is written for anyone living now or in 1,000 years. However, there is also a special group of people for whom this book is intended above all. It is a book for heroes. People who want to change their country or the entire world and believe themselves to be selfless in doing so. Your friend and involuntary teacher, V. Tarasov, November 8, 1990, Poway, California. Chapter 1. The Path. First, we choose our path. Then, the path chooses us. The meaning of any activity lies beyond its own boundaries. A man picked up a glass of water and took a sip. Maybe he was just thirsty. Maybe he wanted to taste the water. Maybe he wanted to fall asleep and not wake up, but he tripped and hurt himself. We cannot know unless we know what came before and what came after. To understand the meaning of an activity, you must step beyond its boundaries. Within that activity, we can only grasp its smaller parts. The meaning of any activity lies outside its limits. So does the meaning of life. It lies beyond life's boundaries. Within life itself, we cannot discover its meaning. We can only understand the meaning of our individual deeds and daily events. Go beyond life's boundaries. There were 3 brothers. The first never felt discouraged. If something went wrong, he convinced himself it was for the best. He could justify any failure and sincerely believed his own explanations. He lived a not-too-bad life. The second never wasted his efforts. He limited himself if needed, always thinking about tomorrow, sure that tomorrow would be better than today. He also lived a not-too-bad life. The third always did what was required. He liked following every rule and law, never breaking any. He too lived a not-too-bad life. We are not particularly fond of these 3 brothers, even though each achieved a decent result. It doesn't appeal to us to live in self-deception, or to live only for tomorrow, or to follow others blindly. We want something that gives our life meaning right now, at every moment. Then you must go beyond the boundaries of life. The man who fed the monkeys. A man who fed monkeys with nuts said one day, "Dear monkeys, there aren't enough nuts now, so I will give you only 3 kilograms in the morning and 4 in the evening." The monkeys became furious. All right, laughed the man. "I will give you 4 kilograms in the morning and 3 in the evening." The monkeys were delighted. That man died long ago, but he still controls us. I do not know his name or anything about him other than this act. It does not matter whether I feel offended by the story with the monkeys or not. It controls me. I can no longer pretend I have never heard of this man or his ingenious trick. He has long since turned to dust, but still manages me. And now he manages you, too. By that act, he stepped beyond the boundaries of his own life, and we sense his greatness. Want to know his favorite song or his wife's name? So do I. Why do we know nothing more about him? Because the essence of his life boiled down to that single deed. We pity him for that. We also sense our own greatness, and in doing so, pity ourselves. Pieces of our life jostle, getting in each other's way. We destroy what we have built, like someone who has lost their way, wandering forward, then returning backward. A great goal is achievable. A boy lost his way in a forest. He did not know what to do or where to go. He even began to cry. Then he composed himself, gathered his courage, climbed a tall tree, and saw his path. Where do we find such a tree so as not to lose our way in life? That tree is our great goal. It really must be big, just like that tree. A great goal is one that can be reached, but only after death. Smaller goals we can achieve in our lifetime. A great goal helps us see our path. We may suddenly realize it. Of course, how did I not figure that out right away? A person with a great goal knows their path. One who lacks a great goal does not know their path. Such a person is pathless because they only set goals they can achieve in life. Set the date of your death. A man wrote down the date of his own death, which was far in the future because he wanted to be sure he would not outlive it. He feared making a mistake. It is a tragedy when someone's great goal turns out to be small and gets accomplished before death, robbing life of all meaning. Do we really want what we think we want? We are always together. Me and my date of death. Once a person sees the path, he is no longer the master of his fate. Now the path chooses him, dictating his actions. The path is a great manager. If you ask for an example of a great goal, I would have to lead you by the hand into the forest and show you the big tree that boy climbed. Do you really want what you think you want? We do not know who is old or who is young. A prince decided to let his horse rest and get a drink. He went down to the riverbank where an old fisherman was catching fish. The fisherman was 80 years old. They started talking and ended up chatting for 4 hours, because after every answer from the old man, the prince wanted to ask something more. The prince then made the fisherman his first minister. The old man governed the country for 40 years before he died. Another youth, living in another land at a different time, was a talented military commander at 17, but he had poor health and died at 19. We do not know who is old or who is young. The old fisherman was still a youth at that riverside, with 40 years of leadership ahead of him. The young commander was already an old man at 17, with only 2 years left to live. We do not know who is old or young while a person is still alive. We could set our death date far off and thus die young, or choose an earlier date and live our entire life as an old person. One who chooses their date of death and knows the path transforms their life. Friends age and vanish into the past. New, younger friends also age. People age and pass by. This is sad. Life cannot consist solely of joys and successes. Joy and failure. This story is not that rare. A man, imagining himself equal to the gods, is punished by those very gods who take away his failures. Suddenly, everything goes perfectly. All his desires come true. He goes insane and ends his life. Do not think you would have fared better. Failures link us to reality. They keep us from losing our mind. Only those who are insane have no failures. As one of the 3 brothers said, every misfortune holds something good. We just do not know in the moment whether some event will prove to be a success or a failure. Another brother said we only see that tomorrow. As for the brother who obeys rules and laws, he believes neither success nor failure can occur because he did not create those rules. Even if we imagine the worst scenario in which all humanity suddenly perishes, some no longer need to face the dentist or a tough exam, and some villains get the punishment they deserve. No one can tell what will be a success or failure for a person, except that person themselves. We only see their reaction. Their face or body language might reveal whether the news is good and joyful or bad and sorrowful. And about us, others deduce the same from our look and behavior. They might ask someone else, so how is he taking it? Between the moment we hear the news and the moment someone first sees our reaction, There's a gap, sometimes very brief. That gap is our star moment. In that moment, we can either succumb to defeat, lowering our authority and worsening the situation, or spot and quickly exploit the positive aspects. This is our star moment, our chance to redirect events or even our own fate. Until someone sees our first reaction, the star moment remains ours alone. The peasant who owned a horse. A peasant who owned a horse was considered wealthy in his village. Many envied him, but when his horse ran into the forest and did not return, people stopped envying him. Some even pitied him. However, the horse then came back, bringing along a stray stallion. Everyone envied him again, but when his son fell off that new stallion and broke his leg, the envy turned to pity. Yet when war broke out and all the young men were conscripted, but his son was deemed unfit because of his injury, people once more envied him. Only the peasant himself did not grieve or rejoice. He did not know how, because he saw no point in either sadness or joy. Each of us, at times, feels emotions that seem misplaced or illogical. A cup slips from our hands. We try to catch it, almost succeed but fail, and it shatters. In that moment, we feel slight relief. No more need to chase the cup. It's done. Nothing depends on us anymore. Mentally, we are upset, yet physically we sense relief. This subtle sense of relief is our emotional hint that the star moment has arrived. We can turn misfortune into something else, or at least salvage what remains. This fleeting sense of relief shows up with any failure or tragedy, like marbles in a shaken box. Imagine a box filled with wooden and copper marbles of the same size. Close the lid and wait. Open it. They are still mixed. Close it again and shake it thoroughly. Open it. And mostly the wooden ones are on top, while the copper ones sink to the bottom. The marbles know their path. Are we less wise than marbles? An old man was riding a crowded bus. People pressed against him from all sides, and he needed to exit. He could barely breathe, let alone move. Fortunately, the bus rattled over a rough road, giving him enough jolts to edge toward the door. Life's bumps can also help us advance if we know where we want to go. A person with a great goal is not thrown off by life's hardships. Successes and failures alike move them forward. Does it matter how the box is shaken or how the bus rattles? What matters is that something happens. The spider's 8 legs. Having a goal is not enough. You must hold on to it. A child begs you to play with them. Should you postpone it until they grow up? But you must finish some work or pay a debt on time. We have countless obligations. Who has time for big goals? A circus performer carries a cup of coffee, stumbles, falls, and tumbles on the stage. You expect the cup to be shattered and the coffee spilled. Yet he stands up, showing the cup intact and the coffee still inside. It is his profession. He knows how to do it. Likewise, one must know how to hold on to a goal through tumults and setbacks. Then you rise, and the goal remains safe. As with the spider that moves on 8 legs, they do not all go in different directions. If you know your path, you hold on to your aim. The trainer of fighting roosters. A coach came to a prince and offered to train his fighting rooster. The prince agreed. 10 days passed. The prince asked, "Is my rooster ready?" "No, not yet," replied the coach. "He's too full of himself and too eager to fight. He's not ready to go into battle." After another 10 days, the prince asked again. Still not ready. He's too nervous, reacting to everything. Not ready yet. Another 10 days later. Still no. He's filled with aggression that leaks out and remains visible. 10 more days. What about now? Almost. He's active but seems carved from wood. He no longer reacts to others' cries. Other roosters will not fight him. At the mere sight of him, they flee. Mastery has no limit. Those who have seen true mastery remain silent when they see lesser work. Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know. Understanding surpasses knowledge. Horizontal career. What good is it for a first-level rooster to be appointed the country's head rooster if he has seen the mastery of a fourth-level rooster? In striving for a vertical career, titles, positions, salaries, one might seem successful but neglect the horizontal career, the continuous growth in professional mastery. Real skill stays within you. It cannot be taken away as easily as removing insignia from your uniform. Yet horizontal growth is invisible to most people, except those initiated. Who is a master? Who is an apprentice? The master and the apprentice know their own levels. When life offers a choice, develop horizontally or vertically. Choose horizontally. If vertical advancement is ever needed, it should be picked like ripe fruit from a branch. If you cannot reach it, the skill is not yet there. You must still learn and progress step by step. It's better to be truly competent than to just appear so. Manage from any point. Each of us governs the world in some way, possibly poorly. A stone on the road can direct a wagon's course. A child who cannot yet speak manages their parents. A dog manages its owner. A cat manages a dog. Everyone manages everyone else. Managing the world is not shameful. Doing so badly is. One who has a path constantly learns to manage the world better. Their path is their teacher. Of course, it is easier to manage a factory or country if you are formally in charge, and everyone must obey you, but that is not the only way. You can manage from any position, geographical or social. If you cannot, you must learn. Those who have a path have a teacher. You cannot successfully move forward without managing others well, nor can you manage others well without having a path. Once a rabbit was asked, "You wanted a stronger subordinate. You complained that your helpers were too weak. Now a bear is looking for a job." "Oh no," the rabbit exclaimed. "We are doing fine now. No need for that. Really, we're good. No complaints or requests." Whoever has a path does not complain or beg. They only propose. They have no higher authority or defender than their path. If a strong person asks something from a weak person, it is a proposition, not a plea. If they complain to someone weaker, it is actually a moment of trust. Weak people can be interrogated or forced. A strong person cannot be forced. If you complain or beg, it means you do not have a path and therefore you are always weak. A refusal makes you even weaker if you are not prepared for it. Someone who simply proposes is prepared for a refusal. Having a path, they become stronger whether the answer is yes or no. Like marbles in a box being shaken. One can be, or just appear to be. One might appear to be a complainer or beggar, but cannot truly be one. Strength and weakness. A son asked his father, "How do you carry huge logs all day without seeming tired?" "That's true, and my strength lies in indifference. It doesn't matter to me whether the log is thick or thin, heavy or light." Yes, strength lies in indifference. Nothing can stop a person who remains undeterred by obstacles. One who tries to prove something by argument shows weakness. Logic cannot replace the strength of will or spirit. Argument is a form of begging, asking the other side to take your proof seriously. A truly right person is strong simply by knowing they are right. Their conviction fills the space around them, even if they say nothing. Their gaze convinces more than any argument and can halt an endless flow of words. It doesn't matter whether you say yes or no or what evidence you offer, only whether you say it from a position of strength or weakness. You can say yes from strength, meaning you could have said no but chose to agree, or yes from weakness, implying you had no power to refuse. You can say no from strength, meaning you could have agreed but chose to refuse, or no from weakness, meaning you had no power to comply. One who has a path is always right, and being right boosts physical strength. In ancient times, rightness was tested in combat. Paths do not cross. Paths do not intersect. Those who truly have a path cannot obstruct each other. There is space for everyone. because the path is neither a man-made structure nor a fantasy. It exists as long as a person does. It can be seen, recognized, dreaded, or welcomed, but everyone has only one path. Not choosing it does not mean choosing another. It means living without a path. First, we pick a path, then the path picks us, and we can do nothing but follow it. Like a polite crowd moving through narrow doors without conflict, so two people with real paths do not hinder each other. Anyone who has a path always has enough time. Only a slave to the moment is rude and unethical. Looking from the future brings calmness, a calm view from the future. When the Wei Kingdom needed a new first minister, one nobleman was offended to learn someone else was chosen. He went to the newly appointed minister and said, "Let's compare our achievements, shall we? Let's do that. Which of us leads an army whose soldiers and officers willingly face death? That would be you. Who manages officials, keeps close to the populace, and fills the treasury better? You or me? You. Who defends the country so mightily that even a strong enemy doesn't dare turn our way? Me or you? You. In that case, I am superior in every way. Why then do you outrank me? May I ask a question? If we have a young sovereign ruling an unstable country, and officials who do not support him, and if the people do not trust him, to whom should the kingdom be entrusted? You or me?" He paused, then replied, "You. That is why I am above you." A lesser man might have pretended to be humble and kept silent. But the new minister was concerned not with immediate appearances, but with clear future relations. A calm view from the future clarifies everything. A list of past achievements cannot outweigh future expediency. One who has a path never acts because, but always for the sake of. Even the weakest, for the sake of, is stronger than the strongest, because the path is stronger than the person. "And what can you do?" a man asked the genie. "Everything," answered the genie. "See that dog with a curved tail? Straighten it out." The genie easily uncurled the tail, but it immediately curled again. He tried again with the same result. Then the genie realized there was something he could not do. A dog's tail, in its humble way, knows the shape it should have. Hence it proves stronger than the genie. Even though the genie is stronger than a human, and a human is stronger than a dog, we know it is easier to ask for someone else than for ourselves. Easier to fall asleep if someone promises to wake us up in time. Easier to insist on an order if someone higher up has given it. It's far easier to refuse by blaming someone else. Having someone stronger behind us is comforting. Our path is that someone, we follow its will and act in its name. We are strong because it is stronger, wise because it is wiser, kind because it is more generous, calm and resolute because it always knows what we should do. Our words carry truth and persuasion because it gives them to us, and we are loved by others because it loves us, enveloping us in warmth and strength. That is our path. Each person's path is unique. No further words are needed. Chapter 2. The Great Manager. We only know one thing about the Great Manager, that he exists. He will come and say, "Everyone found the proposal appealing," but he came and said, "It won't work," all at once. People realized it truly would not work under any circumstances, and why it wouldn't, and what would happen if they tried anyway. An idea seemed impossible. He came and said, "Why not?" Immediately everyone saw that it could be done, and suggestions poured in about how to do it. The work began. Later, he started saving even those few words. A mere ironic glance or a half-closed eye in agreement was enough for everyone to understand everything in general and in detail. They asked him, "Why does it happen this way?" After all, we end up seeing what we already knew ourselves. Why are we so helpless? You're not helpless. I'm just not entirely useless. You need a monarchy, not necessarily a monarch. He fell severely ill. For several years, he could only convey hints with his eyes. Once he died, everything fell apart. The ideal leader. It is like having a gravely ill person in the house. Everyone immediately fulfills his slightest wish, hoping not to misunderstand it. The mere thought of denying his wish seems immoral. That is the force driving everyone. An inexperienced driver slams on the brakes, and the passengers are jostled when the car stops. He presses the pedal to the floor at the last moment. An experienced driver stops smoothly, barely spilling the passengers' coffee, because he actually eases off the brake the instant the vehicle stops. Their foot positions at the final moment are opposite. Mastery comes in switching from one habitual approach to its opposite. Horizontal becomes vertical at each new level. An inexperienced leader first ponders what order to give, then exerts frantic energy ensuring that order is carried out. A skilled leader first creates conditions for carrying out any of his commands. Then he need not issue them as formal orders, but merely express a wish, and does not worry about whether it is done. Why worry? That's for other people to handle. The ideal leader essentially does nothing. There is no need to give orders if people should already sense what to do. No need to check whether it's done if there was no global catastrophe or world war to interfere. He is unpredictable. Nobody can guess what would happen if his word were violated, but presumably something truly terrible. Nobody can even finish imagining the idea of disobedience because it is frightening halfway through. He is like darkness, impossible to see through his intentions. He is like thunder. No one knows where the next strike will land. He is like fire. You can bask in the warmth, but come too close and it's unbearably hot. He does nothing. As a sailor gliding under full sail does less work than one rowing a boat. He is both loved and feared. Two powerful emotions walking hand in hand behind him. An apple in the grass. In the grass lay an apple, still good but with a small bruise on one side. A teacher picked it up and said, "There are two ways. I can wipe it off and eat it right away, or I can pull out a knife, cut away all the questionable spots, then eat it without worry. I will eat more this way because I won't discard any good parts around the bad. However, it requires some preliminary work. These are two different strategies in every matter, absolutely every matter. Nothing is more important than this distinction." He took out a knife, trimmed the apple, and began eating it slowly. "Will you share it with us?" Someone joked. "No," he joked back. "I want you to remember this better." He finished the apple. He rarely said no, but he knew perfectly how to do it. Solid and empty. Solid is anything you can lean on without falling through. Words or numbers you can trust. A person on whom you can rely who will not let you down. A car in excellent condition that starts and goes when needed. Solid is exactly that, dependable. Empty is anything you cannot rely on. False or incomplete information. A soldier who panics and runs away. A friend who breaks a promise. A factory that spoils materials while producing nothing useful. Empty is exactly that, unreliable. Distinguishing solid from empty is critical, the most important of all arts. Combining the two yields emptiness. Many human endeavors are wasted because they contain something empty. A young boy was sent to learn a craft but received no training. Instead, he was treated poorly. Finally, he wrote a letter detailing his misery to his grandfather, but the address on the envelope was vague. To grandfather in the village. It never reached him. The letter's content was solid, but the address was empty, rendering the entire effort empty. We often find ourselves in that boy's predicament more than our pride allows us to admit. If one of 20 elements is empty, everything is wasted. Separating empty from solid is like using a knife to cut away the bruise on an apple. The smell of apples should remind us of this highest art, knowing how to remove the empty and keep the solid. Training the harem. I've read all 14 chapters of your treatise. It's good, but theory is one thing, practice is another. Can you show me how you practice your skill? I can. What army do you need? Any? Then take my harem. The strategist formed the women into 2 squads of 90 each in the courtyard, explaining left, right, and about face. He appointed 2 of the prince's favorite concubines as officers. I will give commands to these officers, and they will command the soldiers. He then shouted, "Left turn," The officers, laughing, repeated the command, but the women did not obey. Some turned left, some turned right. Others sat on the grass. "It failed," said the strategist, and repeated his explanation. But it happened again. "It failed again," he said. "Who is to blame?" "Not me. I explained it twice." "Are the soldiers to blame?" "Not really, because the officers gave their commands in a way that implied they need not be followed. Therefore, the officers are at fault. Off with their heads." "No, no," said the prince. "I see you're a good strategist. Your Highness, if we do not execute them, people will say you have a strategist whose orders go unheeded." The favorite officers were beheaded, replacements were assigned, and the drill began to work. "It is still not a great army," the strategist told the prince, "but I can go to war with it." Annoyed, the prince walked away. Indeed, theory differs from practice. Fear and fearlessness. Fear is a very important emotion. You cannot dismiss or ignore it. It exists for a reason. It can degrade us to an animal level or elevate us. One might sacrifice one's life out of fear of tarnishing a friend's honor. It's not that we experience fear, but what we fear and why. Why did the harem's women finally succeed? Possibly from fear. Why was the strategist now confident he could go to war with them? Because they were fearless, knowing they would not be punished if they had not personally erred. Soldiers need not fear punishment for an officer's fault. That is fearlessness. But if they fail their duty, punishment is certain. No one is spared, not even an officer. So how could a regular soldier expect leniency? Fear plus fearlessness is the foundation of an army. One should not fear the enemy or the commander if one is doing one's duty. It is terrifying only not to do your duty. This abrupt boundary clarifies duties and commands. You cannot blur the lines between fear and fearlessness. The last order of a commander. The last order of a commander must be carried out. This rule has saved many princes from themselves. Imagine the temptation for a prince to dismiss a commander to cancel an unpleasant order. But what good is dismissing him if the order still stands? A new commander cannot undo it. So the last order is unalterable. Laws do not have retroactive power, protecting society from itself. Changing any rule after the fact is a sign of treachery or weakness. Even children refuse to play such unfair games. The quickest way to lose honor and trust is to revise an agreement retroactively to one's advantage. Yet it is also the fastest way to test a partner's integrity. If they do it, it reveals emptiness. The prince survived the test. The commander delays. A commander delays if he cannot see victory. Victory is an essential rest stop on the path. You must spot it. That requires stillness and observation, not haste or impulsiveness. A prince was in the capital while the emperor was away at war. Friends and everyone else urged the prince to flee, saving his life. They offered help to get him and his family out. But the prince saw no reason for the emperor's supposed anger. His conscience was clear and he had faithfully served. He was confused and found life unbearable amid the alarming signals. Word spread that sea routes were blocked and time was running out. Walking in the garden with his wife, he tried to figure out all possible causes for the emperor's alleged hostility, but found none. He felt madness taking over. Logic was dissolving like old rubble. The prince locked himself in his office, sank into a chair, and pondered for many hours. A simple notion stirred inside him, growing stronger and clearer. All known events formed one coherent picture, leaving no doubt. Like reassembling a broken plate, the emperor was not behind this. In fact, others wanted him to flee, framing the situation. He suddenly calmed down and even laughed at the clarity. He ran to share his relief with his wife. Laughing, they double-checked each piece of the puzzle. He did not flee. Others did. You cannot detect victory without pausing to look for it. Time passes, responsibilities press harder. The only option is to see the path to victory. Understanding matters more than knowledge. The temptation of alibi. Temptations and seductions await everyone. That is nothing new. We each have some experience resisting them. A temptation may enter our house through the door, fear, passion, money. Or it may slip in through a window, honor, nationality, parental feelings. Or it might be born within the house itself. The alibi for one's own failures. I did everything I could. This is its formula, its venom. Nothing hampers recognizing victory more than the urge not to be idle at a critical moment. Act now. Everything screams. Yet to act rashly might be surrendering to the temptation of creating an alibi. I tried everything. I'm not to blame if we lost. Which is more important? Achieving victory or proving my lack of guilt if we fail? It's nice when these goals overlap, like carrying logs one by one to move a whole pile. But what if they diverge? We pretend they do not, but we risk humiliating ourselves by acting blindly. A cruel prince devised a new execution by forcing the victim to walk across a slippery copper pole 1 meter above blazing coals. If the victim didn't fall, they lived, but they always fell and burned. The cruelty was that they themselves caused their own demise. Another prince from a neighboring land sent costly gifts pleading for an end to this torture. Though it did not affect his people, it offended him as a human being. We should not become paralyzed by the question, what can I change or not? Confusing the part that depends on me with the part that does not makes us insincere to our path. If something truly does not depend on me, I cannot fix it, but I should not pretend helplessness for that which truly does depend on me. Don't fake efforts or frantic activity in pursuit of victory. Instead, truly manage and win. Only the path can judge you. Get closer to the deer. If someone says, I have something in my bag, so I want you to do this for me, approaching the deer means insisting on seeing what is in the bag. If someone claims, he's gone, approaching the deer means asking, when did he leave? By what means? The point is not distrust but clarity. People often cannot distinguish emptiness from solidity and may mislead themselves and you unintentionally. They all left, they say, not noticing one who remained. They are not lying. They simply did not check carefully. If something breaks, open the lid and look inside. If you can't find someone, search thoroughly yourself. If they claim something is written down, read it yourself. If they say, it's delicious, taste it. If they say, it wasn't done, verify, maybe it was. Never start acting on uncertain signals. Whatever you can confirm yourself, do so. Check. Ask questions in detail. Only then will you learn to see emptiness or solidity without physically touching it. Yes, I want to check it personally. I am not concerned with not being guilty of the mistake. I want to ensure the mistake never happens. Dear dear, forgive me. Choose a path, then think who will walk it. Choose a path, then consider who will walk it. Do not send someone who can't approach the deer to verify details. Do not show a shortcut to an elderly person if it involves jumping across a ditch. Do not send a timid person to negotiate with a bully. Do not constrain a quick-witted person with detailed instructions. Skilled actions bring success. Unskilled actions bring danger. Different paths suit fish and birds. There is no single shoe size for all people. If someone is unsure, hesitates, disagrees, or protests, then you offer them the wrong path. People calm down quickly and gratefully when you show them their path. To approach someone, you must know their path, even if they do not know it themselves. The greatest art is helping someone see their own path. You need the skill to give clear directions, to see from their eyes whether they grasp it or not. By their eyes, you can tell solidity from emptiness. Show each person their path. Paths do not intersect. Lift a child in your arms so they can see. Manage many. Manage the many as you do the few. The art of leading big armies, cities, or countries is to treat the large group as if it were a smaller one. Unintimidated by size, refusing to be led by events or opinions, and recognizing the small within the big. It is easier to rule the hungry than the well-fed, for the hungry want bread. It is easier to govern the poor than the rich, because the poor want money, and it's clear how to guide them. People with a common enemy are simpler to direct than those with many differing foes. Turn the large into a smaller set of parts. Each portion must be assigned a vassal or assistant. Then define the boundary between emptiness and solidity, where a vassal can act independently without the overlord, and where they cannot. It is problematic if they cannot do anything without the overlord, or if they always can. It is also problematic if the vassal does not know where they can act, or if their overlord does not know. Worse is if they both know but differ on what they believe. It is good if these 5 bad cases do not occur. Someone splitting logs incorrectly just hacks randomly, often across a knot. One who is skilled splits a log with one precise blow. So 2, dividing a large task should follow natural lines. If not needed, don't divide it at all. If we do divide, reconsolidating is easier if the parts were split intentionally. People test bridges by applying pressure, test beams by pushing them, test metal by bending it. Making people uniform arises from seeing them as different. Unity can be found in clarity of path, stages, laws, oversight, punishments, rewards, and role models. A brave soldier does not advance alone. A brave soldier does not attack by himself, and a coward does not retreat alone. Once a soldier, overwhelmed by anticipation of battle, ran to the enemy lines and beheaded 2 foes, returning triumphantly. But the commander had him executed alongside those 2 heads because no general order to charge had been given. It was crucial to avoid losing discipline. Imagine soldiers in the trench itching for battle. If one courageous man leaps forth and others follow, who remains? Only a coward waiting in the trench for an order that never comes. A year later, is he disciplined or cowardly? If everything is in its place, that is order. If it's broken but we know who broke it, that is disorder. If it's broken but no one can tell who did or what was broken, that is disorganization. Worse than mere disorder. In disorganization, fear and fearlessness reverse. Obeying rules becomes frightening, and breaking them becomes easy. That is disorganization. An army in chaos suddenly finds itself surrounded. Nobody hears the officers. The commander gallops in yelling. There he is, the provocateur. Stop him, and cuts down the first soldier he sees. Everyone calms. Discipline and fighting ability return instantly. With startling speed, the provocateur is named, and each soldier's mind finds relief in an explanation, though it might not be literal truth. The prince overcame his confusion by finding the real cause. The general overcame disorganization with a quick scapegoat. Don't be charmed by the overzealously bold, the all too clever, the ones with too much initiative or risk disorganization. That is why among 2 equally good candidates, the less clever might get chosen for a position. The more intelligent one is placed elsewhere, with the first drum beat. At the first beat of the war drum, the army's fighting spirit surges. At the second, it wanes. At the third, it disappears. The drum calls them to attack. They rise eagerly, but if the attack is canceled, morale drops. A second rally call yields a half-hearted response. A third might fail entirely. Prepare thoroughly before raising the army for attack, not after. Once a commander told his army there would be false signals for attack. Hearing that, the enemy also signaled an attack. But this commander's troops did not move. The enemy, suspecting a trap, withdrew. Again a false signal. The same happened. When the real attack was signaled, the foe, demoralized, was easily defeated. An order to advance is like the starting pistol. Everyone is ready, waiting. Come on, shoot. There must be a little time for that final. Come on, come on. During that time, you make sure all is in order. This small pause between full readiness and the command to go is your anti-star moment, when everything can be ruined if you rush. You must learn to hold that pause. When everything is clear and you should agree, you still wait a moment. That moment might reveal something crucial. Similarly, You leave empty space between baggage so your hat does not get crushed. Gaps in time and space are vital forms of control. Forbid telling truth unprompted. Forbid truth-telling on issues you have not asked about. Require truth on the ones you did ask. Unsolicited truth is like an uncommanded attack, dangerous. Even silence can be taken as consent. Telling the truth spontaneously might be helpful, but you must see if the subordinate then steps back to their proper place. If they do so precisely, it shows concern for the cause, not for expanding their rights. If they do not, it reveals their ambition to expand power. No matter how useful their truth, do not encourage that. Also, praising someone based on their own words or punishing them based on their own admission leads to distortion. Rewards or penalties should come from broader reality, not just their statements. Strength lies in indifference, ready to hear any truth calmly, deciding when it truly matters. Not because, but for the sake of, first words, then deeds. People forge new ground first by thought, then by word, then by action. A new good idea starts in the mind, eventually voiced to someone else, discussing the plan and the first steps. If the first step is doable, they proceed. Similarly, a bad idea also moves from concept to words before becoming deeds. Stopping it at the talking stage is easiest. If one tolerates talk, it soon becomes reality. It is like slipping down an icy slope. Once you gain speed, it's hard to stop. Thus, watch words, especially jokes. A joke can be a test for acceptance. If there is no resistance, the plan advances. One stops a joke with another joke. If you do not want certain actions, do not let them be discussed. Planning is more dangerous than acting. Intention is more dangerous than planning. Discussion is more dangerous than intention. Words are more dangerous than discussion. Jokes are more dangerous than words. A mere glance or subtle sign can be more dangerous still. The deeper it is buried, the more dangerous. Two friends working in a garden. Two friends were digging the soil with hoes. Suddenly, one friend's hoe hit something solid. He picked up a piece of gold and tossed it aside as if it were a common stone, continuing his work. They then sat reading on mats in the garden. A dignitary passed by in a carriage. One man rose and looked after it. The other slid his mat away, saying, "You are no longer my friend." They had no dispute about gold or wealth because they knew higher values. But with respect to fame or social recognition, they were on different sides. One friend would not wait until his companion betrayed him out of vanity. It's like spotting food that has started to spoil. Do you wait until it's fully spoiled to discard it? Hence, no glance, no smile, no joke, no word is inconsequential. Some might call these high standards excessive. Others find great joy in living by such standards, joy available only to a few. If you understand these pure colors, you are fortunate. If not, it is not your fault. In truth, this book is kinder than it first appears. Speak about what exists. Am I correct that you are offering me a bribe? Excuse me. Are you trying to court me? It seems we now have a minor conflict of 2 versus 3, with the third person uncertain. People who can calmly state what is really happening in the present moment shift the conversation's flow, sometimes creating social awkwardness. This directness is powerful, but you also must ask yourself such direct questions. Even so, the highest skill is to remain in a state where no such question would reveal anything new. That is true openness. It penetrates someone's layers without harming them, making them more honest and kind. Not all imperial orders should be obeyed. When an emperor sends a general off to war, he kneels and kisses the wheel of the general's chariot, granting the general power to decide which imperial orders to fulfill and which to ignore. The emperor cannot see everything from the capital, so if the general believes an order harms the army or national security, he may disobey it. Once a vassal arrived late with his troops and was sentenced to execution. He pleaded with the emperor, who sent a courier to the general, ordering him to cancel the sentence. But by the time the courier arrived, The vassal was already executed. The courier galloped up to the general's tent, offering the emperor's edict. The general read it, handed it back, and said, "Not every order the emperor should be followed." He then turned to an officer. "What do we do with someone who gallops at full speed through the camp?" "Death," said the officer, "as we must prevent panic." The courier tried to explain how urgent the emperor's command was, that it meant a man's life. "Fine," said the general. "We will not execute you. We must, however, honor the emperor. Instead, we will execute a child. They killed a child. We do not know which child, and it does not matter. He was innocent, which was precisely the point. If they had executed the courier, the general would have been right, but this was a kind of rightness akin to stepping out onto a highway and getting hit while in the crosswalk. Yes, he was legally correct but would soon be dismissed, and a weaker general would replace him. The army might be destroyed, the country lost. So the courier could not be killed. Yet if the courier were spared without punishment, rules could be broken at will. That leads to disorder. The punishment had to happen, and so they executed the innocent child, a harsh but logically consistent decision in that brutal context. This is the technology of life, not necessarily a moral endorsement. Packaging a deed. Like shipping a valuable item, one must package important deeds so their essence is not lost or distorted over time. The general performed two actions. He did not say to the courier, "You arrived too late." That would imply the vassal's execution might have been canceled if only the courier had come sooner, making it seem the general himself had been too hasty. Instead, the general's second deed, executing a child, made clear the unstoppable finality and upheld discipline. He used that child's innocence as part of the package, ensuring the story would be told correctly and unambiguously to future generations. The morality of killing an innocent. This poses a moral dilemma. Is the entire technology proposed here devoid of morality? Suppose we declare, "I don't approve of killing a child," and move on. Yet from the general's viewpoint, the army's unity and the country's survival hinged on discipline. Some might say, "I don't know. I'm not a military man," effectively leaving moral decisions to others while also condemning them from a safe distance. That is just one step away from immorality. If saving the entire nation is weighed against an innocent child's life, it is painful yet might appear necessary. People sometimes cite Dostoevsky's question, "Would all the happiness in the world justify the tears of a single innocent child?" The philosophical argument is endless. One who has a path is always right, but only if that path is truly one of goodness. This is not a matter of theoretical speculation, but of real life. The path of goodness can still lead to such grim choices. Punishing the innocent. Punishing the innocent goes beyond executing a child. Adult innocence can also be punished. There can be scenarios where an innocent adult willingly accepts punishment in place of others, sometimes even crucifixion. Yet punishment is complex. Punishment for one person may be a reward for another. A revolutionary, for example, may view a death sentence as a kind of glory and life in prison as a humiliating punishment. The essence of punishment is removing someone from what they hold dear. The same goes for rewards, moving them closer to what matters to them. For one, a single coin might be worthless, for another invaluable. We recall earlier the notion that good or bad results aren't always obvious. You cannot punish one who has a path. No punishment exists for them. You must win hearts before punishing. If you have not won hearts, you cannot punish. If you have won hearts, you cannot avoid punishing. If you have not earned people's trust and loyalty, punishing them for disobedience only weakens your authority. But if you have earned their trust, failing to punish will encourage them to forget boundaries. They will only obey commands that benefit them. This leads others to pick and choose which orders to obey, destroying unity. Remember, one is punished only if they feel punished, not merely because punishment is declared. Do not deceive when rewarding or punishing. Reward or punish the deed, not the person. You can dislike someone you reward or love someone you punish, but do not alter your decisions. Everyone carries an internal judge, a final authority in their own personal world, well versed in every detail, even the subtlest tone of voice or glance. If you reward or punish them as a person rather than their deed, this inner judge reopens the case. You might never know the outcome, but your influence weakens. When promising a reward, think not only of what the person merits, but whether you can actually follow through, even if others oppose you. If you want to forgive someone, who will forgive you if you let them off undeservedly? As the story goes, a general cut off his friend's head for wrongdoing and wept while doing so. He cut and cried. One can grieve for the person, yet carry out the punishment. If you must do it firmly and compassionately. Beneath the heavens, not worth it. All the riches in the world are not worth having them alone. It might be easy to share small gains with helpers, but big ones are harder to share. If you do not share, your helpers may abandon you. Standing with his general before battle, a prince asked, "Who will win?" "We will," the general replied. "Our enemy is smart but greedy. When it's time to reward his people, he will stall, pretend to lose his official seal, anything to avoid paying. They will not die for him. Sometimes it's not greed but fear of conflict. Distributing rewards can lead to squabbles. Someone always finds it unfair. Even delegating the distribution can cause resentment. Still, you must share. Divide the army for loot. In times of war, allowing troops to loot might be a form of reward and release. But to prevent disorder, territory for looting is divided among different units. Each loots their assigned area. The total spoils vary, but at least partial fairness is achieved based on skill or luck. Centralizing all the loot for the commander to distribute would create more discontent. Similarly, in business, you can reward people by assigning them certain segments or clients. Let them reward themselves by working that territory effectively. One can also reward with shares equity, though the original distribution might still cause grievances. The best reward is knowledge. Knowledge can be given in increments, a next skill level or piece of information that helps each person unlock future opportunities. Those who work harder benefit more from the new knowledge, so it feels fair. Farewell to a person. We care for our subordinate or helper. We teach, reward, punish. We recall that not all of the emperor's orders must be followed, but the commander's final order must be. So if we give them a task, we raise them above ourselves. For that task, they are in command. We are there to help if needed, but the result is their responsibility alone. They bear it fully. When you lift a child high in your arms, you let them see their path. That is always the path of goodness, open to everyone. A subordinate is not merely a servant. They remain your unequal until they find their own path. If they sense that being involved in your plans helps them see more clearly, they trust you with their future. But the better you lead, the faster they will leave because they will find their own path. And so, we watch them go, as a mother sees in her child's eyes the longing to leave the nest. It is a sweet sadness. We lose them by our own hand. Our own path compels us to transform people, never letting us keep an eternal subordinate. It is bittersweet. The great manager leads me with no words, and I pass that leadership on to others. With certain people, silence is more profound than talk. He who knows does not speak. He who speaks does not know. I speak too much because I do not know enough. Forgive me, great manager. Chapter 3. The Human Army. The cause of war is ignorance of its outcome. War is the path of deception. One cannot wage war successfully without deceiving the enemy. Each side hopes for a different outcome than the other imagines. If both sides knew the definite result, there would be no war. For example, if after a war half of one army and a third of the other would die, why not just kill exactly those soldiers and redraw the border accordingly? Both sides would save time and ammunition. Why not reduce the number to kill on both sides? That leads us to the idea of disarmament. Why doesn't it happen? because each side hopes to trick the other. War is also about deceiving one's own people, uniting them through hatred for the enemy. So it is that any war is also waged against one's own nation, yet one who has a path may still wage war. Deception is the path of war. You cannot deceive someone without risking war. A friendly joke can become a friendly fight, or a silent deception a silent battle. If you plan to deceive, prepare to fight. Anyone who deceives you might fight you or at least not stand with you. Never force someone to deceive you. That is one of the most common self-inflicted crimes. Self-deceit arises from not being truthful with oneself, pushing others to deceive you as well. War brings suffering. Self-deceit is a drug that grows in dosage, a war of exhaustion against oneself. A mixture of envy, insecurity, vanity, and bitterness, signifying the absence of a path. One with a path does not deceive first, prevents others from deceiving him, and is always truthful with himself. That is the starting point. Who climbs a tree seeking direction if he will not admit to being lost? I got lost means I personally got lost, even if blindfolded by others and left in a forest. I govern the world but poorly, so I lost my direction. My mistake, my failure, my star moment, my joy of adversity, my new chance, my path. The technology of deception. When near, appear distant. When you have something, appear to have nothing. When strong, appear weak. When unwilling, appear eager. And when you do all this, appear not to be doing it at all. Technology of deception is repeatedly swapping the solid and the empty. Two young men, friends, played military games together and were both gifted. As they matured, one envied the other's success and told the prince that his friend planned to defect to the enemy. Lacking proof, the prince merely had the accused man's legs cut off to prevent escape. But ironically, the informant was the one who eventually defected, as living near the friend he had wrongly accused was intolerable. He ended up fighting his homeland, which was not in his original plan. He simply wanted to be the prince's top general. The crippled man, though, refused the position of official general, fearing mockery since he had no legs, but in practice still commanded the troops. Their rivalry continued at a distance, until one day the crippled man's smaller army retreated before the traitor's forces. While fleeing, the legless hero instructed his soldiers to make half as many campfires each day as the previous day, misleading the enemy into believing his force was diminishing. The enemy general, blinded by overconfidence, pushed forward. We can guess the outcome. Deception and falsehood differ based on motive. The first friend lied out of envy, leading him to betrayal. The second performed a righteous deception, exploiting the enemy's arrogance. One lacking a path fails to distinguish the empty from the solid, especially in himself. Why did the prince believe the first deception? He half believed it. Much like a modern court lacking full proof, it hands down a partial sentence. Some people are bad actors, making it obvious that they lie. Others are so good at pretending that it is not easily exposed. Once, the prince rode past a fresh grave where a woman waved a fan over the dirt. Curious, he asked, "My husband died. I vowed not to look at another man until his grave was dry." The prince found it amusing and told his wife, who angrily denounced the woman far too strongly. Suspecting his wife's sincerity, he tested her with a trap. She failed and, ashamed, hanged herself. We see that excessive indignation can signal a lie or self-delusion. Also, by testing someone in secret, you commit your own deception. If you test others, you might harm them or reveal your own guile. The one who tests others is often the first deceiver. The art of war. Military skill is striking the empty with the solid, like a stone hitting an egg. You can't fail. Solid against solid ignites sparks and heavy losses, a bloody path to disarmament. Attacking the foe's weak spot is the real skill. Let him have 100,000 soldiers, and you only have 100. Still, your 100 can encircle and defeat his 100,000 if you choose the right place and time. Any victory must be easy or it is not a victory. A wise fighter first plows the field, ensuring strong logistics, avoiding battle until ready. The best way to win a war is not to wage it at all. The best way to destroy the enemy army is to keep it whole and render it useless. The best way to nullify an enemy is to make him a friend. If an enemy finds a path, he ceases to be your enemy. Paths do not intersect. True friendship is only possible between lonely path followers who do not compete or betray each other, like a great musician and a great glassblower. If you cannot befriend him, destroy his plans or his alliances so he abandons war. If that fails, prepare to fight, but even then, guide him so he might see his path or at least a way out. Love your enemy in that sense, so they become less dangerous. The falling millstone. A youngest adopted son in a large family revered his older siblings, fulfilling all his duties. People praised him and used him as an example, aggravating his jealous brothers. They tried to beat him, but he was elusive. Whenever they needed help, he was there. Whenever they planned to ambush him, he vanished until their anger subsided. Finally, they decided to kill him. They forced him to dig a deep well, planning to drop a heavy millstone on him. Sensing their intentions, he dug a side recess, hiding there when they rolled the stone in. Thinking him dead, they celebrated with too much wine. Next morning, suffering from hangovers, they found him offering them a cold drink and a towel. He so impressed the people that they made him their prince, and he abolished the copper pole torture. One who sincerely cares for his enemies knows them well and becomes invincible. You cannot guarantee victory over any foe, but you can be unbreakable. Show the enemy a road to life. Government troops surrounded bandits in the mountains. The bandits were well armed with plenty of supplies. The encirclement forces suffered losses. An elderly strategist advised, "Your ring of steel is perfect. Even a mouse cannot escape. Therefore, the bandits have no choice but to fight to the death. Give them an escape route, some hidden path, so that the faint-hearted and unwilling can flee. A single postal clerk can capture them all afterward." That is how it played out. The outlaws were taken to the capital and executed. Think not just of how wonderful victory is for you, but how defeat will look for your foe. Provide them a path that, at each stage, seems acceptable or even comfortable. Ideally, a red carpet ending in surrender. When a foe is desperate, it is harder to defeat him. If someone said no to you, do not push them to reverse it without new information. They need an excuse to save face. Consider every stage of your opponent's defeat, so it does not look worse to them than fighting on. If a fugitive enemy flees too fiercely, do not chase relentlessly, or they will stand and fight. Nor should you gloat over your presumed triumph, or they will backtrack. Take them step by step into the future. The future vantage simplifies the present. Struggle over past, present, future. Warfare is arduous. Fighting over the past is pointless. Vengeance tries to rewrite history, an insanity. Those who fixate on revenge are out of touch with reason in many areas. Because is a lesser form of revenge, possibly aimed at weather or fate. A child might claim, "He pushed me first," even though he actually struck him earlier. Trying to reason with such a child is as futile as calming an adult obsessed with vengeance. One without a path is out of sync with time, like a child. Life is about sorting events chronologically, deciding what comes first, what later. Fighting for the present is the bloodiest. Hand it over now. Stop right there. Answer me immediately. Emotions peak, driving solid versus solid. A skilled commander avoids that, maneuvering so the enemy must yield without direct confrontation, like leaving a position, so the foe must do the same. Those who want a direct clash push for an immediate fight or confrontation. Those who seek resolution shift the conflict to the future. Fine, you take it, but tomorrow you'll have to answer for it. Provoking someone about the past. Remember what he did to you. Stokes grudges. A wise warrior wages war over the future, leaving the foe space to reconsider. Don't turn a foe into a bigger foe. Gaining profit is luck. Gaining profit is luck. Fighting for profit is danger. If a strategic hill is unoccupied, it's fortune to seize it without conflict. If it's occupied, trying to capture it is risky. Usually, avoid direct confrontation if possible. If you cannot because the objective is too important, you must approach it in increments, each step being profit still unclaimed by the enemy. If even a small part is claimed, subdivide further, like sneaking into a queue without pushing or fighting, step by step. That is war with zero losses. A warrior, worried about facing a stronger rival, asked a turtle, "Give me the strength of your shell." The turtle replied, "I will give you the speed of a rabbit. Then your powerful foe won't touch you." Indeed, brute force is useless if it cannot catch its target. Position yourself on favorable ground. Favor the high ground, letting the enemy approach uphill, or forcing them into a swamp or river behind them. If you have the sunny side of the mountain, your troops stay healthier while the enemy is hampered. If your advantage is money, you enjoy financial security the other side lacks. If it's the law, you act legally, they do not. If it's expertise, you maneuver in fields you excel in while they flounder in ignorance. Always shape the battlefield so you stand on high ground. If your opponent stands on it and tries to lure you, hold back. Apologize or pick another moment. If a field looks suitable but was chosen by the enemy, be wary. Pride leads to defeat. It's better to shift the battlefield. Restrain with harm, move with benefit. Holding someone in place with a threat or potential harm is often more effective than promising them a reward if they remain. Pushing them away with threats might drive them forward unexpectedly. Meanwhile, guiding them forward with an attractive benefit is more natural. "Come with me, please," and they follow. That's why people can be tempted by bribes, but resist blackmail fiercely. Military traps often exploit these instincts. If the enemy tempts you with a reward, they want you to move there. If they threaten you, they want you immobile. Yet the greatest benefit is showing someone their path. Some will abandon everything to follow it. Be the host, not the guest. The host is the one who controls entry, who can question the guest, who is well prepared with supplies and rest. The guest must request entry, arrive tired, answer questions, risk refusal, and rely on a guide in unfamiliar territory. Always strive to be the host. "I won't go. Let them come to me." If you must visit them, do so on your terms. If you both are equals, meet on neutral ground. If you propose a new subject first, you become the guest in that topic. The other can question you and possibly dismiss you. Skilled conversation involves reversing roles. "You probably know why I wanted to see you." If they take that prompt, they become the guest. Being the host is not just about location, but mindset. Real skill is to keep claiming unoccupied advantageous roles anywhere you go. Leave second, arrive first. Do not reveal your form to the enemy. Your soldiers need not know your destination or strength. Only reveal your plan when it is inevitable. If your soldiers demand detailed explanations, they are unready. Their joy should be in executing any command. If your city is under siege, the enemy watches for your approach. Let them leave first. Once you see their direction, you choose yours and arrive before they expect. A city was besieged by the enemy. A general camped with a small army nearby. The enemy spied on him. He treated the spy kindly, releasing him. The spy reported that the general was merely fortifying his camp, not planning an intervention. The enemy relaxed but was still unsure. Meanwhile, the general told his officers, "Anyone who gives me advice shall be executed." The enemy continued bombarding the city, and it nearly collapsed. One officer could not bear it, urging the general, "We must move now." The general beheaded him, confirming to the enemy that no rescue would come. Confident, they threw everything into the assault. Only then did the general strike at their rear, saving the city. That is how you leave second yet arrive first. It requires extreme discipline. Lengthen your path, arrive first. A short route is straightforward, but there can be many long routes. By choosing a more roundabout way, you might avoid the adversary's traps and still reach the goal first. Sometimes the first pioneer endures heavy losses forging ahead, while a second comer perfects it. If you cannot be the second, do not trust the second. Create intermediate long steps and still be the first to each partial gain. Do not chase profit 100 li away. Li is a measure of distance. If you see profit 100 li away, you might stretch your forces too thin. By the time you arrive, your army is decimated. If the profit is 50 li away, maybe only half the men become stragglers. Use intermediate gains. Proceed step by step. If that's impossible, split the army by endurance level. Each wave arrives fresh at intervals, maintaining order. A commander might also apply realistic deadlines to tasks, not impossible ones that cause chaos. A new boss might energize a team, but as tasks multiply, some can't keep pace. Outside departments grow jealous. Schisms form. If the boss tries to push beyond realistic limits, 100 li of profit, the operation might collapse or get taken over by someone more pragmatic. You aim too far. A single big error is enough. Place your soldiers on the ground of death. A death ground is a position with no visible escape. Win or die. This can empower your troops with ultimate resolve. Conversely, if you show the enemy no escape, they fight to the death. Instead, give them a small opening so they might flee. Yet for your own soldiers, remove their exit. Once, a commander made several failed beach landings. On the final attempt, he burned the ships, forcing his army to succeed. The enemy panicked, realizing there would be no retreat. A less fortunate commander had rafts ready just in case his large army inexplicably lost. The mere presence of those rafts triggered a self-fulfilling prophecy. Soldiers quickly fled. Death ground is not threatening your own troops with punishment, but literally removing their escape. So the only other option is the enemy's weapons. They must fight fiercely. If you tell someone they must finish a project by noon or you'll leave, discarding it altogether, they might produce better results than with a flexible arrangement. To place a subordinate on death ground is to focus them on one crucial task, removing all other roles. The guard cannot be asked to chop wood in spare time. That would provide a distraction. One person, one responsibility, no partial measures or fallback. You have lifted them above you. The final outcome depends solely on them. Still, you must leave them a real chance to succeed. Otherwise, it's mere cruelty. An arrow without force. An arrow lacking force cannot pierce even thin silk. Arrows are dangerous at close range, but from far away, you might stop them with your bare hand. A commander protects himself by distance. He's not in the front lines where arrows fly. Being too brave can get him killed. Soldiers shield him with their bodies. Similarly, subordinates take responsibility or blame, shielding their leader. The leader stays distant from immediate harm or criticism. Loyal subordinates do not shift blame back onto him, but a leader cannot force them to do so if trust is absent. Doing so too soon reveals moral bankruptcy, eventually leading to total defeat. Time also can shield you. If an opponent's blow is delayed, they lose momentum and must reevaluate. You slip away and return. They become exhausted or err. Keep moving, exit, and return. In distress, think of gain. In success, think of danger. Turning a bad situation into an advantage is tricky. Fleeing an enemy across a river, do not camp right at the other bank. Move deeper inland, tempting the foe to cross and be vulnerable mid-river. Turn shortfalls into opportunities. Lack of weapons fosters trust. No property frees you from envy. No data spares you from certain obligations. There is no flaw that cannot be turned to advantage. In good fortune, remember potential dangers. Before striking, consider how your foe might strike back. Do not rely on their goodwill. War fosters treachery. Not all are noble. Stay cautious. A prince, tired of barbarian raids, easily conquered them. They pretended submission, inviting the prince and his nobles to a feast, then betrayed them. The prince was flayed. Good fortune often breeds carelessness. Only vigilance can prevent such calamities. Govern with civil methods, command with military. Recognize who is truly an enemy. One is not an enemy in all matters. The world is big. Your enemies are sometimes your subordinates in revolt. They become enemies if they lie and cheat you. Real governance merges civil and military methods wisely. Who must obey? Everyone? They must not deceive you or themselves. If a doctor prescribes medication you do not intend to take, you are not obeying. That might force you into warlike conflict if he must rely on your honesty for further research. Or the doctor may share blame for misreading your eyes. The world must obey what is truly solid in you, but you must separate your own emptiness from solidity. Otherwise, you prompt half-truth or lies. Strength is in indifference. Hearing any news calmly. No messenger executed for bad news. Thus people do not hide the truth. The world obeys those who have a path. They do not force but guide. They follow the great manager's commands. What one person can do, how can a single person enforce obedience through a military approach? Their army might be themselves, a human army. Everyone else's armies are potential enemies or allies. A single individual must fill all roles: commander, soldier, diplomat, spy, local guide, yet remain disciplined. In that sense, a single person can do anything an army can: sabotage an enemy's plans, break their alliances, or transform an enemy into a friend. A single person can remain unseen, keep secrets, avoid direct collisions of the strong versus the strong. Large armies cannot achieve such subtlety. Has anyone seen this human army? No. Who knows him or his path? He alone. Armies you do not fight. Some armies are so formidable that fighting them is too costly. If you can avoid battle, do so. Elite forces whose soldiers see themselves on death ground and value an honorable death. They are united like fingers of one hand. Troops descending from high ground, unstoppable as a mountain torrent. Troops heading home, driven by powerful longing. Troops already on death ground. A one-man army in action. You do not challenge them if you can avoid it. Thousands might fear a single cunning criminal who vows to sell his life dearly. How much more formidable is a genuine human army? From small hints, you can gauge an army's state. If soldiers call out loudly in the forest, they are frightened. If they lean on their weapons, they are starving. If they greedily gulp water, they are parched. One voice reveals the mood of the whole. If they talk big, they need a breather. If they advance then retreat, they set a trap. If they are determined but not attacking, they are preparing. Know yourself, know your opponent, know the sky and the earth. Victory is at hand. Ignorance of war's outcome causes war. Knowing its laws leads to victory. Chapter 4. Preparation for death. Death closes our eyes and also opens them. Corridors, doors, and rooms. Life is a labyrinth of corridors, doors, and rooms. After birth, many doors open. Learning to sit, to read, each is a new door. As we age, some doors start closing. We may try to knock again at some we missed. Perhaps it opens a crack, letting us peek and realize it's not our way. Our peers occupy different rooms behind various closed doors. Over time, doors become fewer. Eventually, we find the exit always unlocked. We step outside the house of life. Only then do we understand where we have been. If we ever return, we know the route. One who has a path navigates life, like moving through a familiar home, knowing which doors to open and which to skip, never slamming a door behind so it stays accessible. Do not say, "I'll never need this person or this road again." You cannot be sure. A shut door can haunt you later. Of course, some acts are irreversible. You might step on a twig and break it. You might catch a fish, ending its life. But if you choose carefully from the display of future actions, note their price in the currency of reversibility or irreversibility. Before speaking, ask, will I be able to take these words back if needed? Before acting, consider whether you might irreparably ruin something, no matter how small. Accuracy spares the use of excessive force. The art of the reversible and irreversible is the art of mastering time. The king is portrayed by courtiers. We know someone is a king by how courtiers behave around them. If nobody treats him as a king, then he is not one but possibly a delusional man. A dead man is shown as such by the living. We only learn about someone's death through others' reactions. The same goes for our knowledge that people die at all. Without that external witness, how would we learn about death? Yet the body remains, turning to dust, offering final proof the person did live. Without a body, we might doubt they ever existed. The body itself reminds us of death, both to us and to the person themselves. If you discover your body is missing, you might question your own existence. Others' behavior can convince you that you exist or once did. Without others, how would we know about death? A person's main clock. The body is a person's main clock, measuring out life's time. Without it, all other clocks would be meaningless. The body ages. If it didn't, we would lose all sense of time. Every door we open is a moment on that clock. The clock ticks. We approach a moment when we can no longer move our body. Our life's final second is when the body's movement stops entirely. That is how the body measures life. Why then have other clocks at all? Because we also observe other people, animals, machines, and so on. We synchronize ourselves with them in various ways. Children's games can mimic a countdown, someone counting to 10 while others hide. This is a form of measuring time for intangible tasks. Or we have a watch on our wrist, but can't see it in the dark. We still rely on external signals. Other clocks open up possibilities for coordinating with the world. Life without clocks. If someone loses their main clock, the sense that their body is aging or mortal, they lose direction. If they see no finite boundary to life, every door is infinite and meaningless. They drift, opening and closing doors at random, never leaving the house that seems endless. Indifference consumes them. They do not care what truths they hear or what promises they break. They become a phantom, intangible and unstoppable, because there is no final accounting for them. Their body cannot be locked or harmed. Their existence is a haze, no pain, no sense of tomorrow, no real choice. A ghostly existence without structure. The clock sets a limit, giving life meaning. If the body never aged, we would never truly live or care about which door to open. Pain reminds us that time moves. So do joy and relief. These sensations are like the missing hour hand on a clock. If there is no arrow, we do not know what time it is. Fear of life. Fear can grip people differently. Some are fearful, some are not. Fear is the pain from expecting pain. This cycle can feed on itself infinitely, unless you break it with a path or discipline. We see someone expecting punishment can hardly function. Another person shrugs. I'll handle it when it comes. Fear of life is fear of death. Two sides of the same coin. One who has a path does not fear death, so they do not fear life. Their body is merely one tool to accomplish part of a larger purpose. They can also act through other people or ideas. If they lose their body, they shift to using others. One's own death is just a minor obstruction, like losing a good tool but still having alternatives. Why cling to life? Hence, the path liver neither hastens death nor clings to life. Bigger matters exist. Birth of a person. First, a human body is born. The person is born only at the body's death, when the final stroke is complete. Who am I? A man, a woman, a child? Actually, I am raw material shaping myself over a lifetime. My body might be male or female or any label, but that is not I. I collaborate with others, past, present, future people, shaping myself. Perhaps this book shapes me more than I shape it. In the end, the last touch occurs at the moment of death, when the entire sculpture is finished. Only then is the person born. One cannot see that birth before the body's end. Thus, death closes our eyes and simultaneously opens them. We and others. We do not live alone. Our body's presence often conflicts with others' bodies because they cannot occupy the same space. This fundamental property ensures friction, life, and eventual death. One who knows how to fight also knows how to live and how to die. There is no conflict only between those with a path, but they are few. You must fight someone at least occasionally. Those who are not fought are led beyond life's boundaries, which is the brightest outcome one can imagine. Have a good journey. Conclusion. Now that you have finished reading this book, I believe I understand your feelings. I say farewell. I am leaving for a long time. Perhaps someday if I return, I will write a new book. But I do not promise. You have likely noticed I keep mixing I, you, and we. It seems someone was pushing my hand, making me inconsistent. Yet I think you understood much anyway. If anyone finds something unkind, harsh, or merciless here, they are mistaken. I hope others will correct such a person since I will not be here. Some of my students will surely come forward to explain this book to others. You may wonder if you can trust them. Consider what they say as if it were a new, separate book, no longer mine. If it's good, please believe them. If it's bad, do not. Could it be otherwise? Until we meet again, if we ever do. February 18th, 1991, Ivakino Village, Moscow region.